I want to talk today about something about autism that is very near and dear to my heart, uh, about it being an invisible disability. I've spoken about this in different venues, and it is something that hits me right where I live. And because people look at me, and for the most part, just by looks, they would think that there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. I mean, not that autism means wrong, because I don't like that either. Um, because we're all different in our own way, no matter what it is. So I don't like to define anything like that. But one of the things about autism, which I touched on yesterday, I made a little creative, fun, uh, doodly thing. That's what it's called. It's only about 3.5 minutes. So after this, click on that and check it out, because I think it's fun and creative and well done because I did it. But getting back to this, um, so oftentimes people with autism are invisible because they don't speak up. And we don't know how to speak up. We don't know when to speak up. Sometimes we don't even know that something is wrong enough to speak up. And the more something is wrong, the more we shut down. So the more we lose our voice and we're not able to be that noise in the room that needs to be. And so it's just like this vicious cycle. And it gets to the point where you don't even, you can't be seen at all. And in some ways, people with autism like that, but in some ways we don't. It's like living in a shell or something that you just can't break out of, and you're in your own little prison and you just can't get out of it. So I can list so many stories in my years of having situations like this. One, I'm going to talk about some that are very special to me um, in a very short period of time, and I'll revisit this for sure. But one is when my dad passed away. I was only 11 years old. I was adopted to begin with, so um, there was that. Uh, and my dad was probably one of the most special people in my life. My dad's family was everything to me. Um, and I mean, I just loved him with all of my heart. And I was 11 years old, and I went to swim practice. I was a swimmer, and he was one of my biggest fans. And I went to practice like I did every Tuesday, and I can even tell you uh, what time and everything as if it was today. Um, so I went to swim practice. My neighbor ended up picking me up, and I was like, I that had never happened in all my years. So I was really confused, and it wasn't even a practice that was close to my house, so they had to drive quite a bit. And I'm like, where's my mom? And she's like, oh, well, your dad had to go to the hospital for tests or something like that. And so I thought it was strange, but I didn't say anything, and I just got in our car, and then I went home. We went past my house to their house, and I was again like, this is really strange. Got in their house, and I can remember that we watched Happy Days because that's what was on. And you want to talk about being stuck or having associations, which we all do with autism. I have an association that no matter when I see Happy Days, I have that immediate association with my dad. So which is not a bad thing. By the way, even in this situation, it has become something that I go to for almost comfort about him. I don't know why, in a strange way, but so we were watching Happy Days. The phone rings, and they said, it's time for me to go home. So I was taken home, and there were a ton of cars all in our driveway and up and down the street. And I went in, and I was like, there were all these people there, and my mom was sitting on the couch, and everybody is just staring at me. Nobody got up to talk to me or to greet me or anything. They just all were staring at me. And I said, "What's wrong?" And then my mom just said, still sitting on the couch, just said, "Your dad." And then I said, "Is he sick?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Could he die?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Did he?" And she said, "Yes." And I have no memory, but supposedly I picked up a book and I threw it across the room. So I can remember those days and even years after, but I'll just stick to the days after, where I was completely shut down within myself. I could not find a voice. I couldn't find my way out. Nobody was really talking to me. Everybody was just kind of pointing and acting as if, oh, there's the little girl who lost their dad. But nobody was really trying to reach me where I was. Um, I know that there was a family that came and picked me up and took me to a movie when they were looking at caskets and things like that, and different things. But I mean, not anything to any extent. And if they did, I apologize because I have no memory of it. I do know that probably one of the the people in my family that I really loved. And that's another thing. I mean, nobody knew how I felt about anybody in the family because I never talked. And whenever we had family gatherings, I would just sit there and I would disappear in the room. And it was the most awkward, horrible feeling. And these were people that I loved and I wanted to be a part of, but I didn't know how. So it just, it just made me want to go into this shell and become invisible. Uh, but I would have loved to have had somebody try to reach me where I was. But at the funeral, I was sitting there outside of the room where all the adults were, and I was sitting on a bench by myself. And my cousin got there, and I loved her more than anybody in the family. Just she was just so classy and so beautiful and so put together, and I just idolized her, I guess, as an 11-year-old. I just thought she was really cool. So I sat there and I was like, can she came in, said her goodbyes and or to talk to my mom and people on the inside, the adults. She was a lot older than me, and so then I just said, she did come out and she said something to me, and I said, "Can you stay?" And she said no, that she had other things that she had to do. And I can still remember that as if it was yesterday, but I just remember wanting to tell everybody that I could see my dad breathing and I thought that he was still alive, and it was frantically bothering me that they were going to bury him alive. And it was a nightmare that stayed with me for years. And because I couldn't find the words within myself to explain what I felt, I went up to my mom inside. I just walked in and I tugged on her and I said, um, I think it was something along the lines of his chest is moving up and down or something like that. And so every response that I got was just kind of like, oh, that's no, honey, and that's nice, or no, and, but nobody was trying to like get down and understand what I was trying to say. And so many, I mean, I can't, there are so many times throughout my life where people, and especially my mom growing up, would say to me, "Well, that's not what you said." And I'm like, "Well, that's what I meant." But in so many ways, we just are so misrepresented or misunderstood. And it's a scary place to live. I'll give you one more example, but I have a lot more. And like I said, maybe I'll even come back really soon and talk about this. But I was at a coffee shop in LA because one of my favorite things to do is travel, which I have not been able to do in a while. But I love going to LA. And so I went into this coffee shop in Beverly Hills. No, it was in Venice Beach. And I said to them, I would like whatever it was. And she said, excuse me? And I said, yeah, I would like. She said, are you talking to me? And I said, yes. And she said, well, if you are, you sure aren't talking, you sure aren't looking at me. And I thought, wow. I mean, yeah, people with autism might not look you in the eye, but she and a lot of other people that are in the service industry should absolutely be trained in how to deal with people that might have an invisible disability. And that was so rude. And she made me feel like I wanted to walk out right then and there, that I couldn't even order a cup of coffee without feeling as if I did something wrong. Uh, and and when that happens, which in a lot of my years in school itself, especially after my dad passed away, I went so inward. And also, my sister, who I had lived with me, had been given back into the system and back into with family that, and so I lost my sister at the same time. And so it was so devastating to me, and I couldn't talk about what was going on. I couldn't find the words to share how I was feeling. And there were some kids in school that figured out that I was really having a hard time. And so when, kids can be cruel, and when they see that there is somebody that can't speak up for themselves and they're very vulnerable, and because of some pretty rough situations that I had been in, they took advantage of that, and they threw my books down on the ground, and they would tell me that they would beat me up after school, and they would, um, constantly make fun of me and heckle me and just do things in the hallway, to me, to make me constantly afraid. And then when we're fearful, uh, then that voice goes away even more. So it really is trying to, there's going to be those people in your life no matter where you go. There's just going to be those people. So you have to be able to find the people, or people have to, there has to be people that bridge that gap between them and the disability, the person with the disability, who might look as normal as anybody, but they have a disability, they're not able to find the words, and they want just somebody to ask the right questions and sit. And sometimes just sitting with somebody is really the best thing. If you see somebody that's struggling, somebody that might not be able to find the words, somebody that might seem as if they're shut down, sad. And the thing is I wasn't really, I was sad that I wasn't able to really express myself and talk and share how I really was feeling with people, and that I really didn't have somebody to listen. I was taken to a counselor for a little bit, but I never talked to her. I wasn't able to find the words to share with her. And finally, they just stopped the counseling altogether. So it's being able to find the right answers, the right questions to ask, and being able to bridge that gap between the world and a person with disabilities. So I'll touch on this more, but thank you for listening. And click on that thing that I talked to you about that I made yesterday, because it's really worth it.